Somewhere beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean, a fish no larger than your hand closes its mouth around teeth so large they cannot fit inside its own skull. The lower fangs slide into dedicated sockets carved into the roof of its head. Without them, the fish would impale itself every time it bit down. That is not a defect. That is the ocean's solution to a problem. And the ocean has thousands more solutions exactly like it. The deep ocean covers more than half of our planet, yet we have visually explored only a tiny fraction of it. In that darkness, scientists have found animals that produce their own light, fish so black they absorb almost every photon that touches them, and creatures that have rewritten parts of their own biology in ways that seem impossible on the surface. Somewhere in the deep sea right now, an organism longer than a blue whale drifts through the water, assembled from thousands of individual clones, none of which can survive alone. Male anglerfish dissolve themselves into their mates, fusing permanently into a single body. A Greenland shark swimming through the North Atlantic today may have been alive before Galileo pointed a telescope at the sky. These are not evolutionary accidents. They are the logical outcomes of the largest, darkest, oldest, and most extreme habitat on Earth. By the end of this video, you will understand why the ocean keeps producing creatures so strange they sound like science fiction, what forces reshape life at the molecular level in the deep, and why the animals that seem most alien may actually make the most sense of all. Before the deep ocean reshaped teeth, eyes, skin, or entire bodies, it began its work somewhere far smaller. Its influence reached into spaces too tiny to see, into the crowded interiors of cells, where the chemistry of life unfolds moment by moment. Long before an organism appears strange to human eyes, pressure has already been at work, altering the invisible machinery that determines whether that organism can exist at all. With every descent of 10 meters, another atmosphere of pressure settles onto the water below. The increase is steady, patient, and relentless. By the time the seafloor of Challenger Deep is reached, more than 1,086 atmospheres bear down from above. A steel vessel carried into such depths faces forces capable of reducing it to a twisted wreck. Yet for the organisms that belong there, the crushing weight itself is only the beginning of the story. The more profound effect takes place within living matter. Pressure does not simply push against a body from the outside. It reaches inward and begins rearranging the conditions under which biology operates. Cell membranes, normally flexible and fluid, become increasingly rigid. The delicate movement of nutrients and molecules across these membranes grows more difficult. Processes that seem effortless in the shallows become obstacles in the depths. Proteins face an even greater challenge. Every living cell depends on proteins folded into precise three-dimensional forms. Their shapes determine their functions. Enzymes guide reactions, build structures, release energy, and sustain the countless chemical exchanges that keep an organism alive. Under immense pressure, those shapes become unstable. A slight distortion can silence an enzyme. A silenced enzyme can halt an entire chain of biological activity. What appears from the outside as a healthy animal may, at the molecular level, become incapable of functioning. For life-seeking permanence in the deep, adaptation could not stop at stronger bodies or thicker tissues. The chemistry itself had to change. Across immense spans of evolutionary time, deep ocean organisms altered the amino acid building blocks from which their proteins are assembled. Small substitutions accumulated generation after generation, producing enzymes capable of retaining their functional forms, even beneath pressures that would disable their surface counterparts. The transformation was subtle, hidden from view, yet it changed everything. Within the tissues of many deep-sea fish, Another solution emerged. A compound known as trimethylamine oxide gradually accumulates as depth increases. The deeper a species lives, the greater the concentration tends to become. Acting as a molecular stabilizer, it helps counter the effects of compression on proteins, preserving the shapes upon which life depends. The relationship is so consistent that researchers can often estimate a fish's preferred depth simply by measuring the amount present within its body. The ocean leaves its signature written directly into chemistry. Some organisms moved beyond tolerance and entered something stranger. Among the inhabitants of the deepest regions are pisophiles, organisms whose relationship with pressure resembles dependence rather than endurance. Their cellular systems have become so thoroughly adapted that the absence of extreme pressure becomes a problem. Removed from their environment and brought upward, they do not recover. They fail. The force that appears hostile to surface life is for them a requirement as fundamental as water itself. This reveals the first principle governing the deep. The ocean does not merely reward creatures capable of surviving extreme conditions. It gradually creates creatures that belong exclusively to those conditions. Their chemistry, their proteins, and their cellular architecture become inseparable from the environment that shaped them. The world above and the world below are not connected by a simple gradient of depth. They are separated by different biological rules, written by pressure into the foundations of life itself. There comes a depth where daylight no longer fades, it simply ceases. The last traces of the surface dissolve into the water above, and what remains below is not night in the familiar sense, but a world permanently separated from the cycle of dawn and dusk. Sunlight can travel only about 200 meters into the ocean before the water claims it completely. Beyond that boundary, every organism inherits a problem that shaped millions of years of evolution. Vision is expensive. Eyes require energy to grow, maintain, and operate. In a place where no sunlight arrives, an eye designed for the surface becomes a burden carried for no reward. Across the deep ocean, natural selection responded with remarkable variety. Some eyes diminished, some disappeared, others transformed into structures so unusual that they seem less like biological organs and more like inventions. Drifting through the dim waters of the mesopelagic zone is the bear-eye fish, a creature whose head appears almost unreal. The transparent dome covering the front of its body is filled with fluid, creating a clear enclosure through which its eyes can be seen. Those eyes are not fixed in place, they rotate. Most of the time they point upward, searching for faint silhouettes crossing the residual glow filtering down from far above. When prey is detected, the eyes swivel forward, tracking movement with extraordinary precision. Within that transparent chamber, evolution assembled a visual system capable of looking in multiple directions without moving the body itself. Far deeper, where even the smallest traces of light become precious, another solution emerged. The giant squid carries eyes that can reach nearly 30 centimeters across. In the darkness of several hundred meters depth, large eyes are not a luxury, but a necessity. Every available photon matters. A distant flash from a bioluminescent organism, or the movement of a large predator through the water, may produce only the faintest signal. The immense lenses of the giant squid gather what little light exists and concentrate it into usable information. The darkness did not eliminate vision. It rewarded those capable of extracting meaning from almost nothing. Other creatures abandon sight as their primary guide altogether. The goblin shark moves through deep water with a long flattened snout extending before it. Hidden within that structure are thousands of electroreceptors known as ampullae of Lorenzini. These organs detect tiny electrical fields generated by living bodies. The contraction of a muscle, the rhythm of a heartbeat, the movement of nerves beneath skin, all release signals into the surrounding water. To the goblin shark, existence itself becomes detectable. A concealed animal leaves behind an electrical presence that can be sensed even when vision offers no assistance. At still greater depths, the hadal snailfish drifts through environments where sunlight has been absent for immense spans of time. Its eyes persist only as reduced remnants. Information arrives through other pathways. Along its body runs the lateral line, a sensory system capable of detecting subtle changes in pressure and movement. Chemical traces suspended in the water become messages. Vibrations become maps. The surrounding darkness is interpreted through senses that require no light at all. Color also acquires new meanings in this world. Many deep-sea organisms wear shades of deep red. Near the surface, red can appear vivid and unmistakable. Yet water absorbs red wavelengths quickly, often within the first few tens of meters. At depth, red bodies lose their color entirely and appear black. A pigment associated with visibility in one environment becomes concealment in another. As generations passed, darkness stripped away familiar solutions and encouraged entirely new ones. Eyes were reduced, enlarged, repositioned, or replaced. Perception spread into electricity, pressure, and chemistry. Life continued to search for ways to navigate a world where light had vanished, adapting itself not to the presence of illumination, but to its complete absence. A flash appears where no sun has ever reached. For an instant, a blue spark blooms in the water, hangs motionless, and vanishes. Moments later, another glimmer emerges somewhere beyond it, followed by another, until the darkness reveals itself not as empty space, but as a landscape scattered with living signals. In the deep ocean, light did not disappear with the sun. Life rebuilt it. This achievement emerged repeatedly across evolutionary history. Bioluminescence was not inherited from a single ancient ancestor and passed down through generations. Instead, it arose independently, again and again among creatures separated by vast evolutionary distances. At least 40 distinct lineages arrived at the same solution through entirely different biological pathways. The pattern is so widespread that it begins to resemble inevitability. Faced with the same environment, unrelated organisms repeatedly discovered that producing light was one of the most effective ways to survive. A long observational survey conducted off the coast of California revealed just how common this adaptation has become. Across many years of remotely operated vehicle footage, researchers found that roughly 76% of visible animals in the deep water column were capable of generating their own illumination. In these depths, glowing is not unusual, it is expected. An organism that cannot produce light is often the exception rather than the rule. The chemistry behind this living radiance is elegant in its efficiency. Molecules known as luciferin react with enzymes called luciferase in the presence of oxygen. Energy is released not as heat but as light. The process wastes remarkably little energy, producing what scientists often describe as cold light. Long before human technology learned how to create efficient illumination, deep ocean organisms had already mastered it. Most of that light appears blue. Water absorbs many wavelengths quickly, but blue travels farther than any other visible color. In an environment where every photon must justify its existence, blue offers the greatest reach. Across immense volumes of darkness, it became the preferred language. Some creatures learned to speak that language as hunters. The anglerfish drifts through the water, carrying a luminous structure called an esca, suspended above its mouth like a lantern. The glow does not come from the fish alone. Within the lure live colonies of symbiotic bacteria whose chemistry generates the light. Fish and bacteria function together as a single hunting system. The bacteria gain shelter and nutrients. The anglerfish gains a beacon capable of attracting prey from the surrounding darkness. Elsewhere, lanternfish display patterns of glowing organs arranged across their bodies. These patterns differ between species, creating distinctive signatures visible to others of their kind. In a realm where familiar landmarks do not exist, these arrangements serve as identifiers, helping individuals locate appropriate mates among countless drifting forms. Many mesopelagic fish took a different approach. Along their undersides sit rows of light-producing organs aimed downward. By carefully matching the faint illumination filtering from far above, they erase their silhouettes when viewed from below. Their bodies blend into the background glow. Visibility is defeated not by darkness, but by precise imitation of light. The vampire squid transformed illumination into defense. When threatened, it releases clouds of luminous mucus into the water. The glowing particles spread outward like a drifting constellation, confusing the senses of an approaching predator, while the squid slips away into the surrounding depths. Across millions of years, light became communication, camouflage, hunting equipment, and protection. The remarkable part is not that one lineage discovered the strategy, it is that dozens did. The same environmental pressures repeatedly guided evolution toward the same answer, until much of the deep ocean shimmered with organisms carrying their own portable stars, suspended within a world that had long ago surrendered the sun. In a laboratory far from the ocean, a camera flash struck the skin of a fish and seemed to disappear. The equipment was functioning correctly. The lighting was positioned carefully, yet the photographs returned almost nothing. Where scales and contours should have appeared, there was only a dark shape without detail, as though the animal had swallowed the light before it could return to the lens. What began as a simple attempt to document specimens became the first clue that some deep-sea fish possess one of the most extraordinary materials evolution has ever produced. The discovery emerged when marine biologist Karen Osborne examined fish collected from deep trawl nets. No matter how the specimens were illuminated, they resisted photography. Their surfaces refused to reveal themselves. Instead of reflecting the flash, the skin consumed it so completely that the animals appeared as featureless silhouettes. The effect was not an illusion. It was the result of a biological adaptation refined over immense spans of evolutionary time. By then, living light had already become woven into the fabric of the deep. Signals, lures, warnings, and disguises shimmered through the darkness. Every flash carried information. Every glow created risk. The ability to produce light transformed survival, but it also created a new danger. Any creature struck by that illumination could be revealed in an instant. In an environment where visibility was measured in isolated photons, even the smallest reflection could become a fatal announcement. Natural selection responded with remarkable precision. Across at least 16 species of deep-sea fish, belonging to 7 unrelated evolutionary groups, skin evolved that absorbs more than 99.5% of the light that strikes it. These lineages share no recent common ancestor capable of passing down the adaptation. Each arrived at a similar solution independently, guided by the same environmental pressures. The secret lies within structures called melanosomes. These tiny pigment-containing organelles exist in the skin of vertebrates throughout the animal kingdom. In most organisms, they provide coloration. In these fish, however, the melanosomes are arranged with extraordinary density. Layer presses against layer without gaps. Incoming light enters this microscopic architecture and becomes trapped among countless surfaces. Instead of bouncing back outward, photons scatter repeatedly within the structure, extending their journey through melanin until almost all their energy is absorbed and converted into heat. The resulting reflectance can fall to roughly 0.05%. To human eyes, the distinction is difficult to appreciate because the material appears simply black, yet scientifically the difference is profound. Black paper reflects far more light. Velvet reflects far more light. Many engineered coatings designed specifically to absorb illumination perform less effectively than the skin of these fish. Only highly specialized carbon nanotube structures, developed under laboratory conditions, have demonstrated lower reflectance values. The convergence itself reveals the strength of the selective pressure. At depths approaching 800 meters, a single reflected photon may carry meaningful information. Predator and prey occupy a world where detection can depend upon almost unimaginably small signals. Under such circumstances, reducing reflectance approaches the value of invisibility. Evolution repeatedly discovered that absorbing light completely was often more effective than attempting to hide from it. The elegance of the solution has attracted attention beyond marine biology. Engineers developing advanced telescope interiors, deep space imaging systems, and specialized camouflage technologies have begun studying these fish closely. The biological design achieves extreme light absorption through structures that are flexible, durable, and comparatively simple. Nature arrived at an answer that laboratories are still attempting to replicate efficiently. What makes the adaptation especially remarkable is its origin. No organism set out to become the blackest biological material on Earth. The trait emerged as a consequence of countless generations responding to the pressures of survival. Out in the deep, where every source of energy is scarce and every opportunity uncertain, the struggle to remain unseen shaped skin into something that approaches perfect darkness itself. Far above the abyss, a tiny fragment begins its descent. It may be a drifting scale, a strand of algae, a discarded shell, or the remains of an organism whose life ended near the surface. Slowly, it sinks through kilometers of water, joining countless other particles in a continuous downward drift. By the time this material reaches the deepest regions of the ocean, it has become part of what marine scientists call marine snow, a sparse and unending fall of organic matter connecting the bright world above to the darkness below. The journey is long, and almost nothing arrives intact. Along the way, the sinking material is intercepted repeatedly. Small organisms consume it. Larger organisms consume them. Waste products descend farther and are consumed again. Each step removes energy from the original package. What finally settles onto the abyssal seafloor is the exhausted remainder of a resource already processed many times over. Compared to the abundance available in sunlit ecosystems, the caloric value of abyssal sediment is extraordinarily low. For the creatures that live there, scarcity is not an occasional hardship. It is the permanent condition around which life is organized. Every movement carries a cost. Every opportunity to feed carries significance. Under these circumstances, anatomy itself begins to change. Structures that appear excessive or distorted from a surface perspective become practical solutions within an environment where food may arrive rarely and unpredictably. The gulper eel offers one such solution. Its body narrows into a long tail, while the front expands into an immense mouth that dominates much of its total length. Hinged jaws unfold into a pouch capable of stretching around prey far larger than the eel might seem capable of handling. The stomach follows the same principle. Expansion replaces precision. The animal is built around the possibility that the next available meal could be the last one encountered for a very long time. A similar logic appears in the black swallower. This fish possesses the remarkable ability to consume prey more than twice its own length and many times its own mass. The stomach distends dramatically, transforming the animal into a living storage vessel. Sometimes the strategy succeeds, sometimes it fails. Researchers have recovered specimens containing meals so large that decomposition began before digestion could finish. Even failure reveals the pressure under which the adaptation evolved. Refusing an available meal can be more dangerous than attempting an impossible one. The fang-toothed fish carries another answer written directly into its skull. Its teeth seem disproportionate to the rest of the body, extending so far that special accommodations are required when the mouth closes. Yet these structures are not designed for display or intimidation. They function as restraints. In a habitat where encounters with prey may be separated by days or longer, losing a captured animal can represent a significant loss of energy. The teeth form a cage that makes escape extraordinarily difficult. The viperfish pushes the same principle even further. Its needle-like fangs project beyond the confines of the mouth itself, curving upward along the face. The jaw can open to nearly a right angle, creating a formidable trap. Every element of the skull has been shaped around securing prey during the brief moment when opportunity presents itself. Efficiency becomes less important than certainty. Across the deep ocean, these forms reveal a common pattern. Hunger does not merely influence behavior. It penetrates the architecture of the body. Jaws enlarge, stomachs expand, teeth lengthen. Flexibility gives way to specialization. Evolution begins treating every feeding event as a rare and valuable occurrence, redesigning organisms around the challenge of extracting the greatest possible benefit from each success. In the depths, survival often depends not on finding abundant food, but on enduring the long intervals between meals. The ocean answers that challenge with bodies shaped by patience, economy, and the relentless arithmetic of scarcity. In most environments, scarcity encourages reduction. Bodies become smaller, growth slows, and energy is conserved wherever possible. Yet the deep ocean often follows a different logic. In its cold and resource-limited expanses, evolution repeatedly arrived at a solution that seems almost contradictory. Instead of shrinking, many organisms became enormous. This pattern appears across lineages separated by vast evolutionary distances. Crustaceans, worms, invertebrates, and other groups that share little recent ancestry often grow to dimensions far beyond those of their shallow water relatives. Marine biologists refer to this recurring phenomenon as deep-sea gigantism. It is not a rare curiosity confined to a handful of species. It emerges so consistently that it resembles one of the governing principles of life at depth. Part of the explanation lies in efficiency. Larger bodies lose energy more slowly in cold environments. They store greater reserves, travel longer distances with less relative effort, and endure prolonged periods without feeding. In a place where meals are uncertain and opportunities arrive unpredictably, size can become an advantage rather than a burden. The additional mass acts as a biological savings account, storing resources gathered during rare moments of success. Among the clearest examples is the giant isopod. Its distant relatives inhabit shallower waters and often measure only a few centimeters in length. The giant species, by contrast, can approach half a meter. Resembling an oversized terrestrial woodlouse, it moves slowly across the seafloor with a patient economy of motion. This restraint extends to its metabolism. One captive individual survived for more than 5 years without feeding, remaining alive through an extraordinary reduction in energy consumption. Rather than searching frantically for food, it simply waited. The Japanese spider crab follows a similar path towards scale. Its body plan differs little from that of smaller crabs found elsewhere, yet its proportions expand dramatically. Fully grown individuals can achieve leg spans exceeding 3.5 meters. Long limbs carry the animal across broad areas of seafloor while minimizing energetic cost. The same fundamental design that produces a modest crab in one environment produces a giant in another when evolutionary pressures shift. As bodies become larger, life itself often slows. Growth stretches across decades. Reproduction becomes infrequent. Metabolism settles into a pace that seems detached from the rhythms familiar at the surface. Nowhere is this more apparent than in the Greenland shark. Moving through the cold waters of the North Atlantic, the Greenland shark grows at an almost imperceptible rate of roughly 1 centimeter each year. Scientists studying the crystalline tissue of its eye lens, which remains unchanged after birth, have used radiocarbon techniques to estimate ages exceeding 390 years. Some individuals alive today began their lives before many of the events that define modern history. They entered the ocean before the invention of the telescope, before the great age of exploration had fully unfolded, and continued swimming while generations of human lives appeared and vanished above them. Such longevity is not an evolutionary accident. It emerges naturally from cold temperatures, stable conditions, and extraordinarily slow biological processes. The chemistry of the deep proceeds at a different tempo. Seasons hold little influence. Sudden environmental fluctuations are rare. Life stretches outward, measured not against years, but against centuries. Seen together, these organisms reveal that starvation does not always produce lean and hurried creatures. Sometimes it creates the opposite. It favors endurance over speed, patience over urgency, and bodies capable of carrying reserves through long intervals of uncertainty. The deep ocean transforms scarcity into scale, allowing evolution to explore forms that seem disproportionate until viewed through the lens of a world where waiting is often the most successful strategy of all. In these waters, survival is not necessarily awarded to the fastest hunter or the most aggressive competitor. More often, it belongs to the organism capable of persisting, conserving, and enduring, allowing time itself to become one of its most valuable adaptations. Imagine tracing a single living body through the ocean for the length of a city street. The line continues beyond expectation, curving through the water in an immense spiral, its structure so elongated that the eye struggles to interpret it as one organism, yet this extraordinary form exists. Among the many inhabitants of the deep, the giant siphonophore occupies a category almost entirely its own. The species known as Praia dubia is often described as the longest animal on Earth. Estimates place some individuals between 45 and 50 meters in length. During an expedition conducted off the Ningaloo coast of Western Australia in the year 2020, researchers filmed a remarkable specimen drifting in a coiled feeding posture. Analysis suggested a length exceeding 45 meters, surpassing the dimensions of the largest reliably measured blue whales and extending beyond the known lengths of the greatest dinosaurs. Suspended hundreds of meters beneath the surface, it represented one of the largest individual living structures ever documented. Yet, even calling it an individual introduces complications. The siphonophore appears at first glance to be a single animal, but closer examination reveals something stranger. It is a colony composed of thousands of genetically identical units known as zooids. Each zooid originates from the same fertilized egg, sharing the same genetic blueprint. Over time, however, these units specialize completely. Some become responsible for feeding, others handle reproduction, others provide defense or propulsion. Each performs a single role with remarkable efficiency. Viewed independently, a zooid resembles a complete organism. It possesses its own cells and biological machinery, yet none can survive for long outside the colony. Together they form an integrated system so coordinated that the entire structure behaves as one creature. The traditional boundary between individual and collective begins to blur. Biology offers categories for animals and colonies, but the siphonophore occupies a space somewhere between them. Its method of hunting reflects the economy that often characterizes life at depth. Rather than pursuing prey through active movement, the colony drifts. From its central stem extends a vast curtain of tentacles stretching through the surrounding water. Embedded within these tentacles are nematocysts, microscopic stinging structures operating through the same mechanism found in jellyfish. Any small fish or crustacean passing through this invisible barrier encounters a network already waiting. Contact triggers an immediate response. Prey becomes immobilized and is gradually transferred towards specialized feeding zooids positioned along the colony. Nutrients acquired in one location ultimately benefit the entire structure. Thousands of individual components participate in a process that appears seamless from the outside. The colony functions as a coordinated whole, despite being assembled from countless specialized parts. Its scale makes this strategy remarkably effective. A siphonophore can extend its feeding apparatus through an enormous volume of water while expending very little energy. There is no chase, no burst of acceleration, no prolonged pursuit. The colony simply occupies space and allows the surrounding environment to bring opportunities within reach. In a habitat where energy conservation often determines survival, this approach proves exceptionally successful. The expedition that documented the immense siphonophore also revealed something equally significant. During the same series of dives, researchers encountered dozens of species previously unknown to science. The discovery served as a reminder that even now, vast regions of the deep remain only lightly explored. Organisms of extraordinary complexity continue to emerge whenever new areas are examined closely. Among them, the siphonophore stands apart because it challenges a familiar assumption. Most animals appear easy to define. They begin and end at clear boundaries. The siphonophore resists such simplicity. It is simultaneously one living entity and many living entities, a biological collective moving through the ocean as a unified whole. In its drifting architecture, the deep reveals once again that life is often far more flexible than the categories created to describe it. Some evolutionary solutions alter the shape of a body. Others alter the way a body functions. The deep-sea anglerfish goes much further. It changes the meaning of individuality itself, reshaping one of the most fundamental assumptions in vertebrate biology, that an organism begins and ends within the boundaries of its own skin. The female drifts through the darkness carrying a luminous structure suspended above her mouth. This organ, known as the esca, extends from a modified dorsal spine projecting from the forehead. The glow appears to belong to the fish, yet the light is produced by an entirely different form of life. Colonies of symbiotic bacteria inhabit the lure, generating illumination through their own chemistry. Fish and microbes form a partnership so complete that each depends upon the other, Without the bacteria, the lure goes dark. Without the lure, the efficiency of the hunting strategy collapses. The boundary between species becomes less distinct than it first appears. Yet the anglerfish reserves its most remarkable adaptation for reproduction. Male serratioid anglerfish begin life as drastically smaller animals. Compared to the female, they appear almost unfinished. Their bodies carry limited energy reserves, and much of their biology is directed toward a single objective. Somewhere within an immense volume of ocean, they must locate a female before those reserves are exhausted. To improve those odds, evolution enlarged the organs responsible for detecting scent. Relative to body size, the olfactory structures are extraordinary. Chemical traces drifting through the water become pathways across otherwise featureless distances. In a habitat where visual cues are scarce and encounters are rare, scent provides one of the few reliable means of locating another member of the species. When a male finally succeeds, the story takes an unexpected turn. Upon finding a female, he bites into her body and remains attached. What begins as contact gradually becomes integration. Tissues fuse. Blood vessels connect. The circulatory systems of the two animals merge into a shared network. Over time, the male's body begins to change. His digestive system loses its purpose and deteriorates. His eyes become unnecessary and diminish. Fins and other structures atrophy as their functions disappear. The female provides nutrients directly through the connected bloodstream, eliminating the need for independent survival. Gradually, almost every feature associated with an autonomous existence vanishes. What remains is reproductive tissue, sustained entirely by the female's circulation. The male no longer functions as a separate organism in any meaningful sense. He becomes a permanent extension of another body, alive, nourished, and maintained through a biological union that can persist for years. In some species, this process occurs repeatedly. One female of the species, Cryptopsaris kuesii, was recovered carrying 8 fused males simultaneously. Each remained attached as a living source of reproductive cells, integrated into the female's physiology. Such an arrangement presents a profound biological challenge. Under normal circumstances, the immune system identifies foreign tissue and attacks it. This protective mechanism is fundamental to vertebrate survival. Organ transplants in humans require extensive medical intervention because the body naturally attempts to reject tissue originating from another individual. The anglerfish solved this problem through an evolutionary pathway unlike anything known elsewhere among jawed vertebrates. Studies have shown that serratioid anglerfish lost important components of the adaptive immune system, reducing their capacity to recognize and reject fused tissue. The very mechanisms that would normally prevent such unions were partially dismantled over evolutionary time. This adaptation has attracted attention far beyond marine biology. Researchers studying transplant rejection and immune regulation have examined the anglerfish closely, searching for insights into how living tissue can coexist without triggering destructive immune responses. Long before human medicine confronted these challenges, evolution in the deep ocean had already produced a workable solution. The result is a creature that blurs distinctions repeatedly, a hunting system shared with bacteria, a reproductive strategy that transforms 2 individuals into one physiological unit, a body that abandons familiar biological boundaries in favor of survival. Within the anglerfish, the deep sea reveals that even identity itself can become flexible when shaped by enough time and enough evolutionary pressure. For most sharks, the mouth remains where anatomy suggests it should be, fixed beneath the head and carried forward by the movement of the body. The goblin shark follows a different design philosophy entirely. It moves through deep water with an appearance that seems almost unfinished, as though familiar shark anatomy has been stretched, rearranged, and rebuilt according to rules written far from the surface. Yet beneath its unusual profile lies one of the most refined hunting mechanisms the ocean has ever produced. Its lineage extends back roughly 125 million years, making it one of the oldest surviving shark families on Earth. Across immense spans of geological time, continents shifted, climates changed, and entire groups of animals appeared and vanished. Through it all, the ancestors of the goblin shark persisted, carrying forward a body plan shaped by a world where opportunities are rare and efficiency matters more than speed. The most striking feature is the elongated snout projecting from the front of the head. At first glance, it appears ornamental, almost excessive. In reality, it serves as a sensory platform packed with ampullae of Lorenzini, specialized electroreceptors capable of detecting extraordinarily faint electrical fields. Every heartbeat, every muscle contraction, every nervous impulse generated by a living animal produces tiny electrical disturbances in the surrounding environment. The goblin shark reads those disturbances as information. Long before a target enters visual range, the shark may already be aware of its presence. Hidden beneath sediment, concealed by darkness, or drifting silently through the water, a living organism broadcasts a constant electrical signature. The shark does not need to see movement. It does not require sound. It does not depend upon scent. Existence itself becomes detectable. Once a target is located, another adaptation comes into play. Unlike the jaws of most sharks, the goblin shark's jaws are not held rigidly beneath the skull. They rest farther back, suspended by elastic ligaments and specialized connective structures. In a relaxed state, the mouth appears relatively compact compared to the length of the head. Nothing about the resting posture hints at what follows. When prey enters striking distance, stored tension is released. The jaws surge forward with astonishing speed, extending far beyond the tip of the snout. The movement occurs in only a fraction of a second, approximately 322 milliseconds. To an observer, the action appears almost instantaneous. The body remains largely still while the jaws perform the attack independently, transforming the front of the head into a rapidly extending capture device. This mechanism allows the shark to seize prey that might otherwise remain beyond reach. In an environment where missed opportunities carry consequences, extending the strike zone increases the probability of success. The adaptation is not an act of excess. It is a precise response to the conditions under which the animal evolved. Viewed closely, the design begins to resemble a carefully engineered system. Sensory organs locate a target. Elastic structures store mechanical energy. Projecting jaws deliver the capture. Each component supports the others. The shark functions as a coordinated solution to a specific ecological challenge, shaped by countless generations of refinement. The deeper story extends beyond the goblin shark itself. Across the ocean, seemingly strange creatures reveal the same underlying pattern. Bodies become tools tailored to unusual circumstances. Teeth, organs, senses, and behaviors are modified until they fit the demands of a particular environment with remarkable precision. What appears bizarre from the perspective of the surface often becomes logical when viewed through the conditions that created it. The goblin shark carries that principle in every part of its anatomy, a living reminder that evolution does not pursue familiarity. It pursues effectiveness. Wherever the path may lead, and however unusual the result may appear. When evening arrives over the oceans, a movement begins that is almost impossible to see from the surface. Beneath the waves, across every sea on Earth, countless animals start rising through the water column. The migration happens in darkness, beyond the horizon of ordinary observation, yet by total biomass, it is the largest daily animal movement on the planet. The participants are small enough to escape notice. Lanternfish, crustaceans, squid, and other twilight zone organisms spend the day hundreds of meters below the surface, hidden from predators that hunt by sight. As daylight fades, they ascend toward the upper layers of the ocean to feed on plankton concentrated near the light. Before dawn, they descend again into deeper water, repeating the journey every night of their lives. For an individual lanternfish, only a few centimeters long, the vertical distance traveled can be equivalent to a human climbing and descending a towering structure each day without rest. Multiplied across billions of animals, the scale becomes extraordinary. What appears to be empty dark water is actually a vast conveyor of life, moving up and down in synchrony with the cycle of day and night. For decades, scientists assumed the mesopelagic twilight zone was relatively sparse. Acoustic surveys gradually overturned that assumption. Sonar echoes revealed immense layers of animals suspended in mid-water, sometimes so dense they resembled false seafloors on early instruments. Current estimates suggest the biomass of mesopelagic fish alone may exceed that of all other ocean fish combined, making it one of the largest reservoirs of animal life on Earth and one of the least directly studied. The significance of this migration extends far beyond biology. It is also a planetary carbon transport system. At the surface, phytoplankton absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through photosynthesis, building that carbon into their bodies. Night after night, migrating animals feed on the phytoplankton and carry the carbon downward inside their tissues. When the migrants return to depth, often several hundred meters below the surface, they respire, excrete waste, and eventually die. The carbon they transported is released deep in the ocean, where currents and mixing processes can keep it isolated from the atmosphere for centuries. This mechanism is known as the biological pump, and it operates continuously across the global ocean. Scientists estimate that mesopelagic organisms transport between 2 and 6 gigatons of carbon to the deep ocean each year. The exact value remains uncertain because much of the twilight zone is still difficult to observe directly, but even conservative estimates indicate a process of enormous climatic importance. Without this biological pump, atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations would likely be substantially higher than they are today. The realization changes the way the deep ocean is viewed. The strange creatures that seem disconnected from human life are, collectively, part of the machinery that helps regulate the planet's atmosphere. Lanternfish, squid, crustaceans, and countless other migrants move carbon from the surface into long-term storage beneath the waves. Their nightly journeys influence conditions far above them, including the composition of the air breathed on land. This hidden migration has been running for millions of years, largely unnoticed by the species living at the surface. Forests, cities, and civilizations have risen while, below, billions of animals continued their silent vertical commute through the darkness. The scale is so vast that the ocean itself behaves differently because of it. And beneath the depths through which these migrants travel lies another realm entirely, one where life no longer depends on sunlight at all, and where the ocean revealed that biology can be powered by the heat and chemistry of the Earth itself. On the 17th of February, 1977, a small research submersible descended into a part of the Pacific Ocean, few human beings had ever seen. The vessel, named Alvin, moved downward toward the Galapagos Rift, passing through layers of water that had remained untouched by sunlight for immense stretches of time. The scientists aboard expected geological discoveries. What they encountered instead altered one of the most fundamental assumptions in biology. The sea floor they approached was fractured by forces originating deep within the earth. Through cracks in the crust, seawater slowly filtered downward into regions heated by underlying magma. There, the water absorbed heat and dissolved minerals before rising again through chimney-like structures scattered across the ocean floor. These hydrothermal vents expelled fluid at temperatures exceeding 400 degrees Celsius. Under ordinary conditions, such water would erupt into steam, yet the immense pressure of the deep prevented boiling, allowing the superheated fluid to remain liquid as it emerged into the surrounding darkness. The environment should have appeared barren. No sunlight reached these depths. No plants could grow. No photosynthesis could occur. According to the prevailing scientific understanding of the time, complex ecosystems ultimately depended upon solar energy. Remove sunlight, and the entire structure of life should collapse. Instead, the researchers found abundance. Towering tube worms extended from the seafloor, some reaching more than 2 meters in length. Dense clusters of mussels and clams surrounded the vents. Shrimp moved through the water in great numbers. Crabs traversed the mineral-coated terrain. Fish occupied the surrounding habitat. Microbial mats spread across surfaces like living fabric. Everywhere the lights of the submersible turned, life appeared not sparse but flourishing. The discovery was astonishing, not because the organisms were unusual, but because of the question they immediately raised. If sunlight was absent, what was feeding them? The answer emerged from the smallest inhabitants of the ecosystem. Within and around the vents lived communities of bacteria capable of an entirely different strategy for obtaining energy. Rather than harvesting sunlight, they exploited chemical compounds rising from the Earth's interior. Hydrogen sulfide, carried within vent fluids, became the foundation of a process known as chemosynthesis. Through a series of biochemical reactions, the bacteria converted chemical energy into organic matter, constructing living tissue without any contribution from the sun. These microorganisms formed the base of an entirely separate food web. Larger organisms fed upon them directly or entered into partnerships with them. Energy flowed upward through the ecosystem exactly as it does in more familiar environments, but its source was fundamentally different. The ultimate driver was not sunlight falling from above. It was geology rising from below. For more than a century, biologists had regarded photosynthesis as the indispensable foundation of complex ecosystems. The hydrothermal vent communities demonstrated that this assumption was incomplete. In only a few hours of exploration, a framework that had guided scientific thinking for generations required revision. The implications extended far beyond the deep ocean. If dense biological communities could thrive in perpetual darkness under crushing pressure, powered entirely by chemical reactions, then the requirements for life were broader than previously imagined. Habitable environments no longer needed forests, grasslands, coral reefs, or even sunlight itself. Life had revealed another pathway. The realization expanded the boundaries of possibility. Beneath the ocean, hidden from human view for almost all of history, entire ecosystems had been operating according to principles few scientists had seriously considered. The creatures surrounding the vents were not surviving at the edge of what biology allowed. They were thriving within a different version of it. In the darkness of the Galapagos Rift, the deep ocean revealed that life is not limited to a single energy source or a single environmental template. It can anchor itself to heat, chemistry, and stone, building vibrant communities in places once assumed to be incapable of supporting anything at all. The discovery transformed not only our understanding of the ocean, but our understanding of where life itself may be possible. A visitor arriving from the surface might recognize the outlines of these animals at first glance. A worm remains a worm, a crab remains a crab, a shrimp still occupies its familiar place among the crustaceans. Yet the resemblance fades the closer one looks. Around hydrothermal vents, evolution has followed routes so unusual that many of the assumptions carried from surface biology begin to lose their certainty, replaced by organisms built around rules that seem to belong to another world. Among the most remarkable are the giant tube worms. Rising from the seafloor in dense clusters, their crimson plumes sway within mineral-rich currents emerging from the Earth's interior. At first, they appear almost plant-like, anchored in place and lacking any obvious means of feeding. The reason becomes clear only when their anatomy is examined. They possess no mouth, no stomach, no digestive tract, and no anus. The structures that define the body plan of nearly every familiar animal are absent. Instead, much of the worm's interior is occupied by a specialized organ called the trophosome. Within it lives a vast population of chemosynthetic bacteria. The worm absorbs hydrogen, sulfide, oxygen, and carbon dioxide through its feathery plume and transports these materials inward. The bacteria use them to manufacture organic compounds. The worm feeds the bacteria. The bacteria feed the worm. Neither partner can survive in its present form without the other. What appears to be a single organism is, in practice, a biological partnership so complete that the distinction between host and symbiont begins to blur. Nearby, another creature has arrived at a similar destination through an entirely different path. The Yeti crab, discovered near Easter Island in the year 2005, carries dense white filaments across its claws and limbs. These delicate strands are not decorative. They provide habitat for colonies of bacteria nourished by vent chemicals. The crab actively cultivates these microbial communities, harvesting them as food. It farms its own crop directly upon its body, moving through the darkness with a living garden attached to its limbs. Further along the vent fields, Pompeii worms occupy a zone that seems almost incompatible with animal life. Their tubes cling directly to vent chimneys where temperatures can exceed 80 degrees Celsius. Conditions fluctuate across gradients so extreme that one end of the worm may experience comparatively cool seawater while the other remains close to intensely heated fluids. Coating the animal's back is a dense layer of symbiotic bacteria, forming what resembles a pale fleece. Researchers suspect these microbes help moderate the surrounding chemical and thermal environment, creating a narrow margin within which the worm can persist. Even sensory perception has been rebuilt. Vent shrimp of the genus Rimicaris inhabit regions where ordinary vision offers little advantage. Their conventional eyes are largely reduced, replaced by a large photoreceptive organ integrated into the carapace. Rather than gathering visible light, this structure detects faint infrared radiation emitted by the vents themselves. The shrimp navigate through gradients of heat and energy that remain completely invisible to human perception, orienting themselves towards signals generated by the Earth's internal warmth. Seen together, these animals reveal something profound. They are not merely surface organisms adapted to harsher conditions. Their biology has been reorganized around a different foundation. Energy arrives through chemistry rather than sunlight. Symbiosis becomes central rather than supplementary. Sensory systems tune themselves to signals unfamiliar to the world above. Entire anatomical structures disappear when they are no longer necessary, while new relationships emerge to take their place. The result is a collection of creatures that appear improbable only because they evolved under circumstances so distant from ordinary experience. Around the vents, life followed another path through possibility, arriving at forms every bit as complex as those of the surface world, yet assembled from a radically different set of solutions. Long before sharks patrolled the oceans, before forests spread across continents, before animals developed eyes, limbs, or shells, the Earth was a very different place. The young planet possessed oceans, volcanic activity, and an abundance of raw chemistry. Yet the transition from non-living matter to the first true cell remained one of the deepest mysteries in science. Among the many proposed origins, one setting has steadily emerged as a particularly compelling candidate. Not a warm shoreline beneath sunlight, but the dark seafloor far below it. The idea gained strength through the study of hydrothermal systems unlike those described earlier. In the year 2000, researchers discovered a remarkable vent field in the mid-Atlantic Ocean known as Lost City. Rising from the sea floor were towering white carbonate chimneys, some reaching heights of roughly 60 meters. Instead of erupting with the intense heat associated with volcanic vents, these structures released hydrogen-rich fluids at temperatures ranging from about 40 to 90 degrees Celsius. The landscape appeared almost architectural, pale spires standing in silent water, shaped not by biological activity, but by the chemistry of rock and sea. What made Lost City especially important was not its appearance, but the conditions it provided. Within these porous mineral structures existed countless microscopic chambers, natural compartments through which chemically active fluids continuously circulated. The environment contained many of the ingredients believed necessary for prebiotic chemistry, the set of reactions through which amino acids, lipids, nucleotides, and other fundamental building blocks may have formed before life existed. Rather than imagining the first biological molecules assembling in an exposed surface environment vulnerable to ultraviolet radiation impacts and rapid environmental change, some researchers began considering a different possibility. Within alkaline vent systems, mineral walls could have concentrated molecules, maintained chemical gradients, and provided stable conditions over immense spans of time. The vents effectively supplied a natural laboratory where increasingly complex chemistry could proceed uninterrupted. The argument became even more intriguing when scientists examined the microorganisms inhabiting modern vent systems. Many belong to lineages positioned close to the deepest branches of the tree of life. Their metabolism relies upon chemical reactions rather than sunlight. Their cellular machinery shares characteristics that align with theoretical reconstructions of Earth's earliest living organisms. Though not direct ancestors, they preserve hints of an ancient biological world that may resemble conditions near life's beginning. Researchers studying these microbes often describe them as windows into deep time. Their existence demonstrates that complex biological systems can flourish in environments once considered inhospitable. They also reveal that chemistry driven by interactions between water and rock can sustain living communities over geological timescales. In many respects, the vents function as living analogs of processes that may have operated billions of years ago. This possibility has attracted attention far beyond marine biology. Astrobiologists searching for life's origins and potential existence elsewhere increasingly examine hydrothermal ecosystems for clues. Mary Wojtek, who has served as the director of astrobiology for NASA, has noted that vent microorganisms provide valuable models for understanding both early Earth and environments that may exist beyond our planet. Their study links the history of life here to the broader search for life elsewhere. Viewed from this perspective, the strange inhabitants of the deep ocean acquire a different significance. The anglerfish drifting through darkness, the siphonophores stretching across open water, the fangtooth armed with impossible teeth, all occupy a realm that may lie closer to life's beginnings than any environment on the surface. They are not merely residents of an unusual habitat, they dwell within conditions that echo some of the oldest chapters of biological history. The realization reshapes the deep ocean once again. It becomes more than a place of extraordinary creatures. It becomes a possible cradle, a surviving fragment of an ancient world where chemistry first crossed the threshold into biology, and where the earliest ancestors of every living thing may have begun their long journey through time. There was a time when the search for life beyond Earth followed a simple assumption: find sunlight, find liquid water, and perhaps life might follow. The logic seemed reasonable because every complex ecosystem known to humanity appeared, in one way or another, tied to energy arriving from a star. Then the deep ocean revealed a different possibility. Entire communities could flourish in darkness, drawing their energy from chemistry rather than light. In that moment, the map of potentially habitable worlds expanded far beyond the narrow boundaries previously imagined. The shift was profound because sunlight is rare when compared to another combination of ingredients. Across the solar system, liquid water and rock appear together far more often than warm, illuminated oceans. If life requires only water interacting with a geologically active environment, then some of the most promising habitats may exist in places once dismissed as frozen and lifeless. One such place circles Jupiter. Beneath the fractured ice of Europa lies an ocean unlike anything on Earth in scale. The moon's outer shell is composed of water ice, estimated to average between 10 and 30 kilometers in thickness. Below that frozen crust stretches a vast saltwater ocean thought to reach depths approaching 100 kilometers. By comparison, Earth's deepest ocean trenches are only a fraction of that depth. Europa remains liquid because it is constantly flexed by Jupiter's immense gravity. As the moon moves through its orbit, tidal forces squeeze and stretch its interior, generating heat. This process prevents the ocean from freezing solid despite the extreme cold of the outer solar system. Deep beneath the ice, where seawater may meet a rocky seafloor, scientists consider hydrothermal circulation entirely plausible. If such systems exist, they would create conditions surprisingly familiar to those found around Earth's deep ocean vents. The possibility transforms Europa from a frozen moon into a world containing one of the largest known bodies of liquid water in the solar system. Hidden beneath ice, thicker than many mountain ranges, an ocean may have persisted for immense spans of time, isolated yet potentially active. Yet another candidate circles Saturn. Enceladus is much smaller than Europa, but in some ways even more compelling. In the year 2005, observations from the Cassini spacecraft revealed towering plumes erupting from fractures near the moon's south pole. Water vapor, ice particles, and other materials were being launched directly into space from an ocean concealed beneath the surface. As scientists examined the plume material, intriguing clues emerged. Among the particles were tiny grains of silica, minerals that form under specific conditions involving hot water interacting with rock. On Earth, similar processes occur around hydrothermal systems. The plume material also contained molecular hydrogen, a chemical energy source produced when seawater reacts with certain rocks deep underground. These discoveries suggested that Enceladus possesses more than an underground ocean. It may possess an active ocean interacting with a rocky core, continuously generating the chemical ingredients capable of sustaining biological activity. The same fundamental reactions that support ecosystems in Earth's deep ocean could be operating beneath tens of kilometers of ice at this very moment. Seen through this lens, the strange creatures inhabiting Earth's abyss acquire an unexpected significance. They are no longer merely examples of adaptation to extreme conditions. They become guides. Their existence demonstrates that life can thrive without sunlight, beneath crushing pressure, powered by chemistry emerging from the interior of a world. The deep ocean's most unusual inhabitants help define the minimum requirements for complex ecosystems. Water, rock, energy, time. Those ingredients appear in more places than once believed. And with each new discovery, the possibility grows that somewhere beneath distant ice, in oceans hidden from every sunrise, biology may be conducting its own long experiment in the dark. In the deep ocean, survival often depends on information. Not strength, not speed, not size, but the ability to discover another living creature before being discovered in return. Across millions of years, this simple requirement has produced a contest unlike any found on land, a continuous exchange of adaptations and counter-adaptations unfolding in a world where darkness never retreats. A faint flash appears in the water. For one animal, it is a tool. For another, it is a warning. The emergence of bioluminescence transformed the deep sea because it created a method of detection where none had previously existed. A hunter capable of generating light could reveal prey hidden nearby. Yet the moment light became useful, selection began favoring organisms capable of defeating it. One solution was disappearance. Certain deep-sea fish evolved skin so extraordinarily absorbent that incoming light scarcely returns at all. Photons striking the surface become trapped within densely packed pigment structures and are converted into heat rather than reflected outward. In practical terms, the animal becomes a moving absence, a shape difficult to distinguish even when illuminated directly. What began as a hunting advantage for one lineage became a powerful incentive for another to become darker still. Elsewhere, camouflage followed a different path. Many midwater species generate light from organs along the underside of their bodies. By carefully matching the faint glow filtering downward from above, they erase their silhouette when viewed from beneath. The technique, known as counter-illumination, allows an animal to blend seamlessly into the dim brightness overhead. Yet even this adaptation did not remain unchallenged. Predators evolved eyes specifically tuned to detect the slightest disruption in that glow. Some possess upward-facing tubular eyes capable of concentrating the scarce light available in the water column. Rather than scanning broadly, they specialize in identifying tiny contrasts against the distant brightness above. Camouflage improved, detection improved alongside it. Among the most remarkable participants in this contest is the loose-jawed dragonfish. In most regions of the deep ocean, red light effectively does not exist. Water absorbs those wavelengths rapidly, leaving little trace at depth. Many animals therefore evolved red coloration because red bodies appear black in the available light, providing effective concealment. The dragonfish exploits this assumption. Specialized organs beneath its eyes emit far red and near-infrared light, wavelengths invisible to almost every nearby organism. It effectively carries a private illumination system, Prey that believes itself hidden is suddenly exposed beneath a beam no competitor can perceive. The dragonfish hunts within a visual channel all its own, revealing targets without revealing itself. Vision itself has diversified into extraordinary forms. Some fish possess reflective structures behind the retina that amplify even the faintest available light. Others stack multiple optical components together, maximizing photon collection in an environment where individual photons matter. Still others have abandoned vision almost entirely, shifting reliance toward electrical sensing and chemical detection. Every pathway reflects the same pressure: gather information while preventing others from gathering it first. Even successful feeding introduces new challenges. Researchers discovered that certain deep-sea fish concentrate dark pigment around their stomachs. The reason is surprisingly elegant. Many prey species produce light. Once consumed, they may continue glowing within the predator's body. Without protection, a recent meal could transform the hunter into a visible beacon. Specialized pigmentation absorbs that internal glow, concealing evidence of the feast. Across these interactions, the pattern remains remarkably consistent. Light generates concealment. Concealment generates improved perception. Improved perception generates new forms of camouflage. The cycle continues without end, refining biological systems across immense spans of evolutionary time. What emerges from this process resembles a technological race conducted through flesh, chemistry, and genetics. The solutions are so effective that engineers studying optical materials, imaging systems, and advanced camouflage increasingly examine organisms from the deep for inspiration. Long before laboratories began asking such questions, the ocean had already spent hundreds of millions of years testing possible answers in the dark. Some creatures seem to belong to the present. Others appear to have drifted into view from a far older chapter of Earth's history, carrying traces of worlds long vanished. In the deep ocean, where environmental conditions change slowly and catastrophic disruptions arrive softened by distance and depth, certain lineages have endured across spans of time so immense that they challenge ordinary intuition. To encounter them is not merely to observe an animal. It is to glimpse a living connection to ages that existed long before familiar landscapes took shape. One of the most famous examples emerged from an event that stunned the scientific community. For decades, the coelacanth was known only from fossils. Its remains appeared in rock layers stretching deep into geological history, with ancestors reaching back approximately 420 million years. Paleontologists believed the lineage had disappeared during the Great Extinction that marked the end of the Cretaceous period. It occupied the same category as countless other lost forms, important to understanding the past but absent from the modern world. Then, in the year 1938, a specimen was recovered from a fishing net off the coast of South Africa. The discovery was extraordinary. A creature presumed extinct had been swimming unnoticed in deep waters all along. Decades later, in the year 1999, a second species was identified near Sulawesi in Indonesia, confirming that the lineage had persisted across distant regions of the ocean. The coelacanth's significance extends beyond its survival. Its lobed fins occupy a special position in evolutionary history. These fleshy, limb-like structures place the animal close to the branch from which all land vertebrates eventually emerged. In a meaningful biological sense, the coelacanth shares a deeper connection with humans, reptiles, birds, and mammals than most modern fish do. While continents shifted, Mountain ranges rose and eroded, and entire ecosystems appeared and vanished. Its fundamental body plan remained recognizable. This persistence does not mean the coelacanth stopped evolving. No lineage remains truly frozen in time. Genetic change continued, adaptations accumulated, and populations responded to their environment. Yet the overall form endured with a stability that seems remarkable when viewed against the backdrop of Earth's turbulent history. Another survivor glides through the depths with an appearance even more ancient. The frilled shark possesses a body unlike the streamlined image commonly associated with modern sharks. Its elongated form, paired with rows of needle-like teeth arranged in a distinctive pattern, recalls fossil species from distant eras. Encountering one feels less like observing a contemporary predator and more like witnessing an echo preserved from deep time. The frilled shark inhabits waters reaching depths of more than 1,500 meters. Its life proceeds at a pace shaped by the cold stability of the deep. Among vertebrates, it possesses one of the longest known gestation periods, extending to roughly 3.5 years. Such timescales reflect an environment where change often unfolds gradually and where survival strategies differ markedly from those of more dynamic surface ecosystems. The persistence of these lineages reveals something important about the deep ocean itself. On land, extinction and renewal repeatedly reshape the biological landscape. Climate shifts, volcanic events, glaciations, and asteroid impacts have repeatedly transformed terrestrial life. The deep ocean experiences these upheavals differently. Though not immune, it is buffered. Conditions remain comparatively stable across immense spans of time, providing refuge for organisms that elsewhere might have disappeared. As a result, some of the animals passing through the darkness today carry evolutionary histories older than the dinosaurs, older than the first forests, and in some cases older than the earliest vertebrates that ventured onto land. They are not relics, preserved unchanged. They are survivors, continuing their journey through an environment that has sheltered fragments of Earth's distant past, while the surface world reinvented itself again and again. There is a difference between something being unexplored and something being almost untouched. The deep ocean belongs to the second category. For all the technologies launched into orbit, for all the maps drawn across continents and deserts, and for all the decades spent probing distant worlds, the overwhelming majority of Earth's largest habitat remains beyond direct observation. The creatures already encountered in this journey, strange as they may seem, emerged from a sample so small that it scarcely registers against the scale of the environment from which they came. A study published in the year 2024 attempted to measure just how much of the deep seafloor humanity has visually examined since systematic exploration began. The result was startling in its modesty. Across all remotely operated vehicles, crewed submersibles, and deep-sea expeditions conducted since the year 1958, the total area directly observed amounted to somewhere between 0.00006% and 0.001% of the deep seafloor, spread across a planet whose ocean floor covers roughly 2/3 of Earth's surface. That observed region is comparable to a small state surrounded by an almost limitless frontier. The implication is easy to overlook. Every conclusion drawn about deep-sea ecosystems, every remarkable animal cataloged, and every extraordinary adaptation documented has emerged from this narrow window. The anglerfish, the siphonophore, the goblin shark, the giant isopod, the tube worms clustered around hydrothermal vents, all were discovered within an observational record that remains astonishingly incomplete. The gaps become even more apparent when viewed through the lens of biodiversity. Estimates produced by researchers suggest that approximately 91% of marine species have not yet been formally described by science. Countless organisms exist only as traces in genetic data, hints preserved in environmental samples collected from sediments, seawater, and remote habitats. In many cases, DNA sequences recovered from the ocean fail to match any known organism in existing databases. These sequences do not merely suggest undiscovered species. Some may belong to lineages whose place within the tree of life has not yet been determined. Each year, roughly 2,000 new marine species are formally accepted by the scientific community. This steady stream of discoveries has continued despite centuries of exploration, illustrating how incomplete our inventory remains. Even broad estimates of total oceanic biodiversity span enormous ranges, with some projections suggesting hundreds of thousands of species still await identification. Perhaps the most revealing examples involve animals that are anything but obscure. The giant squid occupied human imagination for centuries. Sailors described encounters. Legends grew around immense tentacled forms rising from the depths. Yet for most of scientific history, evidence consisted largely of fragments, damaged remains washed ashore, and pieces recovered from the stomachs of sperm whales. Only in the year 2004 was a living adult photographed in its natural habitat. The first video recording of a living adult in the deep ocean did not arrive until the year 2012. The colossal squid remains even more elusive. It is the heaviest known invertebrate on Earth, capable of reaching masses approaching 500 kilograms. Its existence is well established through recovered specimens and unmistakable scars left on the bodies of sperm whales. Yet no confirmed footage exists of a healthy adult moving freely through its native environment. One of the largest animals on the planet remains unseen in the place where it actually lives. These examples reveal the true scale of the unknown. The creatures already known to science represent only the visible edge of a much larger reality. Beneath the routes traveled by research, vessels, and beyond the reach of the cameras lowered into darkness, lies an expanse so vast that even cautious estimates struggle to describe it. The deep ocean is not a nearly completed map with a few blank spaces remaining. It is, in many ways, still a blank space with a few illuminated islands scattered across it, surrounded by distances that continue to keep their secrets. Seen from a sufficient distance, the deep ocean begins to resemble less a collection of individual creatures and more a vast experiment repeated across immense spans of time. Lineages separated by millions of years, descended from entirely different ancestors, entered the same darkness and encountered the same pressures. Again and again they arrived at remarkably similar destinations. Beneath the variety of forms lies a deeper pattern, one woven through every adaptation encountered so far. The significance does not rest solely with the anglerfish, the siphonophore, the giant squid, or the strange communities gathered around volcanic vents. It rests with the recurring logic that shaped them. Evolution is often imagined as an endless branching of possibilities. Yet, in the deep sea, the branches repeatedly curve back toward the same solutions, as though the environment itself is narrowing the path. Consider the appearance of living light. Bioluminescence emerged independently at least 40 times among marine organisms. These lineages did not inherit the trait from a recent common ancestor. Instead, separated by enormous evolutionary distances, they arrived at the same answer to the same problem. In a world where sunlight never arrives, producing light becomes one of the most effective tools available. The chemistry differs, the anatomical structures differ. The organisms themselves may share little resemblance, yet the result appears again and again, recreated from separate beginnings. The same pattern emerges in the development of vision. Large eyes, capable of gathering vanishingly small traces of illumination, evolved in giant squid, deep-dwelling fishes, and numerous unrelated groups. Elsewhere, eyes diminished or disappeared entirely when maintaining them no longer offered an advantage. Different lineages, confronted by the same conditions, repeatedly discovered comparable strategies. The pattern extends beyond light. Ultra-black skin, capable of absorbing nearly every photon that reaches it, evolved independently in multiple unrelated fishes. Each lineage followed its own evolutionary route, yet all converged upon remarkably similar microscopic architectures. Dense arrangements of pigment containing structures reduced reflection to almost nothing, concealing bodies within darkness already difficult to penetrate. The same principle appears among hydrothermal vent communities. Chemosynthetic partnerships between animals and bacteria arose repeatedly from separate ancestral starting points. Tube worms, mussels, clams, yeti crabs, and other vent inhabitants formed intimate relationships with microorganisms that transformed chemical energy into biological nourishment. The details vary from species to species, but the underlying solution remains recognizable. Where sunlight is absent and vent chemistry is abundant, cooperation with microbes becomes an extraordinarily effective path. Size tells a similar story. Deep-sea gigantism emerged across crustaceans, cephalopods, worms, echinoderms, and fishes. These groups are separated by vast evolutionary distances, yet many responded to cold temperatures, sparse food supplies, and immense environmental stability with increases in body size. Larger bodies store more energy, travel efficiently across scattered habitats, and endure long intervals between meals. Once again, the same pressures encouraged the same outcome. Evolution was not wandering randomly through an unlimited landscape of possibilities. It was being guided by constraints so powerful that certain solutions appeared repeatedly, regardless of ancestry. Taken together, these convergences reveal something profound about the deep ocean. It is not merely a place where unusual organisms happen to exist. It is a system with rules so strict and conditions so consistent that life is repeatedly directed toward a limited set of successful forms. The environment acts almost like an invisible sculptor, shaping unrelated lineages toward comparable designs. What appear from the surface to be monsters are often the most efficient answers available. Across millions of years and countless generations, the deep sea has run the same calculation over and over. The remarkable creatures drifting through its darkness are not accidents of evolution. They are solutions, rediscovered whenever life encounters the same enduring equation. From above, the deep ocean can appear seamless, a single, continuous expanse stretching beneath the surface of the planet. Yet this impression dissolves when examined more closely. Hidden within that vastness are countless boundaries, some defined by depth, others by chemistry, temperature, topography, or distance. Life encounters these barriers just as surely as terrestrial animals encounter mountain ranges, deserts, or oceans. Over immense spans of time, separation allows different evolutionary stories to unfold. What emerges is not one deep ocean ecosystem, but a mosaic of isolated worlds, each shaped by its own circumstances and each carrying a biological history partly disconnected from the others. One of the clearest examples rises from the seafloor itself. Seamounts, underwater mountains formed by volcanic activity, ascend through the darkness toward shallower water. Some approach within a few hundred meters of the surface, interrupting currents that sweep across the ocean basin. Nutrients accumulate around their slopes. Larvae drifting through open water settle upon their rocky surfaces. Corals establish colonies. Fish gather in dense concentrations. Crustaceans and invertebrates occupy ledges and crevices carved by time. Because many seamounts remain separated from one another by hundreds or even thousands of kilometers, the movement of species between them can be limited. Over generations, communities diverge. Two seamounts exposed to similar conditions may nevertheless support strikingly different collections of life, each becoming an island suspended in the deep. Far below these submerged mountains lie the hadal trenches, narrow wounds in Earth's crust descending into the greatest depths of the ocean. Although the physical conditions within these trenches often resemble one another, they are not connected habitats. The Mariana Trench and the Atacama Trench exist on opposite sides of vast oceanic distances. Organisms adapted to one trench rarely have any practical route to the other. Isolation persists across evolutionary timescales measured in millions of years. As generations pass, distinct species emerge, shaped by local histories invisible from the surface. The pressure may be similar, the darkness may be similar, yet life follows separate trajectories. Elsewhere, chemistry itself creates boundaries more dramatic than any mountain. Brine pools form where extraordinarily concentrated salt water settles into depressions on the seafloor. The resulting liquid becomes so dense that it resists mixing with the surrounding ocean, producing something astonishingly similar to an underwater lake. A visible shoreline can appear where ordinary seawater meets the heavier brine. To animals adapted to normal marine conditions, this boundary can be lethal. Organisms approaching the edge may become disoriented, immobilized, or killed by the extreme chemistry. Within the pool, however, specialized microbial communities flourish. They occupy an environment effectively sealed off from much of the surrounding ecosystem, protected not by physical walls, but by conditions few other organisms can endure. Cold seeps create another realm entirely. Here, methane and hydrogen sulfide emerge from sediments without the intense heat associated with hydrothermal vents. The chemistry supports dense biological communities powered by chemosynthesis, yet the species inhabiting these seeps often differ substantially from those found around volcanic vent systems. The same fundamental principle of chemical energy supports both habitats, but evolution has assembled different ecological partnerships around that foundation. Similar opportunities have produced distinct outcomes. When viewed together, these habitats reveal a deep ocean divided into innumerable evolutionary chambers. Some have remained separated for periods that make the isolation of famous island chains appear brief by comparison. Within each chamber, natural selection works patiently, responding to local conditions, preserving successful traits, and generating forms found nowhere else. The result is a planetary network of hidden worlds, scattered across the darkness beneath the waves. Each one continues its own experiment, largely unseen, shaping organisms according to rules written by geography, chemistry, and time. Long before any creature moves through an environment, it must first perceive that environment. Every hunt, every escape, every search for food or companionship begins as information entering a nervous system. Yet, the deep ocean reveals an unsettling truth. The reality experienced by an organism is not the reality that exists. It is only the portion of reality its senses can detect. In the darkness beneath the waves, evolution has repeatedly expanded that detectable portion in directions unfamiliar to human perception. The result is a collection of animals inhabiting sensory worlds so different from our own that they might be mistaken for entirely separate realities layered atop the same physical space. A shark gliding through deep water offers one of the clearest examples. Its surroundings may appear empty to a human observer deprived of light, yet the shark is immersed in signals. Distributed across its snout are structures known as ampullae of Lorenzini, tiny gel-filled organs capable of detecting electrical fields of extraordinary weakness. A heartbeat generates such a field. Muscle contractions generate such a field. Even a hidden animal resting beneath sediment produces faint electrical signatures that spread through the surrounding water. Experiments have shown that sharks can detect electrical gradients measuring only a few nanovolts per centimeter. To the shark, a concealed fish is not invisible. It announces its presence continuously through electricity. Along the sides of many fishes runs another sensory system entirely. The lateral line appears outwardly modest, a narrow channel extending along the body, yet it grants access to information unavailable through human hearing. Water displaced by movement creates subtle pressure waves that travel outward through the surrounding sea. The lateral line registers these disturbances directly. A fish can sense the passage of another animal, the approach of a predator, or the motion of a nearby school without relying on sight. In complete darkness, where eyes contribute little, the surrounding water itself becomes a medium carrying information. Among cephalopods, perception expands in an even stranger direction. Octopuses and cuttlefish possess skin capable of rapid color change, a phenomenon already remarkable in its own right. Yet research has revealed that this skin contains photoreceptors, light-detecting cells related to those found within eyes. Scattered across the body's surface, these cells appear capable of responding directly to illumination. Scientists continue investigating the full extent of this ability, but the possibility remains extraordinary. Light may be sensed not only through dedicated visual organs, but across the skin itself, allowing an animal to interact with its surroundings through an entirely different sensory architecture. The ocean also contains information hidden within light itself. Human eyes perceive brightness and color, yet many marine organisms detect an additional property known as polarization. As light travels through water, reflects from surfaces, or passes through transparent bodies, it acquires directional patterns invisible to ordinary human vision. For crustaceans and cephalopods capable of detecting polarization, these patterns reveal details concealed from us. Transparent animals become easier to distinguish. Reflections carry extra information. The water column acquires a visual complexity inaccessible to unaided human senses. No creature illustrates this expansion of perception more vividly than the mantis shrimp. Humans possess 3 types of color-sensitive photoreceptors. The mantis shrimp possesses 16. It detects ultraviolet wavelengths, polarized light, and portions of the spectrum beyond ordinary human experience. The visual information available to it extends so far beyond our own that comparison becomes difficult. Its world contains contrasts, signals, and visual distinctions for which human language offers no direct equivalent. These examples reveal a profound reality. The deep ocean has not merely produced unusual bodies adapted to unusual conditions, it has produced ways of experiencing existence that diverge dramatically from our own. Around every organism stretches a universe assembled from the information its senses can gather. In the depths, countless such universes overlap, occupying the same water while remaining fundamentally different, each shaped by evolutionary pathways that open doors into aspects of reality human perception rarely notices at all. Intelligence is often imagined through familiar shapes. A large brain enclosed within a skull, a body directed by a central command center, decisions flowing outward from a single location. The deeper one travels into the history of life, however, the less inevitable that arrangement appears. Beneath the ocean's surface, and particularly within environments connected to the deep, evolution has explored different possibilities. Some of them are so unfamiliar that they challenge not only how intelligence works, but where intelligence resides within a living organism. Among the most remarkable examples is the octopus. Its body appears fluid and almost improvised, capable of flowing through openings scarcely larger than its beak. Hidden within that flexibility is a nervous system containing roughly 500 million neurons, a number comparable to many mammals. Yet, unlike mammalian intelligence, most of those neurons are not concentrated in a central brain. Approximately 2/3 are distributed throughout the arms themselves. Each arm possesses extensive local processing power, allowing it to respond to information, coordinate movement, and solve physical challenges with a degree of independence. The octopus does not experience the world through a strictly centralized architecture. Intelligence is woven through its body, distributed across 8 flexible extensions that continuously gather information and act upon it. Laboratory studies and observations in the wild reveal behaviors that continue to surprise researchers. Octopuses manipulate objects with precision, navigate unfamiliar spaces, open containers secured by latches, and adapt to novel situations. Individual animals display distinct behavioral tendencies that resemble personality differences. Some are consistently exploratory, others more cautious. Particularly striking is their capacity for observational learning. An octopus watching another individual solve a task can later perform the same task more efficiently than one encountering it for the first time. Knowledge, in a limited but meaningful sense, can pass from one individual to another through observation. Closely related cephalopods reveal additional layers of cognitive sophistication. Cuttlefish, masters of color change and camouflage, have demonstrated an ability that once seemed closely associated with vertebrate cognition. In experimental settings resembling delayed gratification tests, individuals willingly forego an immediate food reward when waiting produces access to a preferred reward later. Those displaying greater patience often perform better in subsequent learning tasks. The pattern suggests that impulse control and broader cognitive performance may be linked through mechanisms that evolved independently from those found in mammals. The ocean also contains intelligence operating on a vastly different scale. Far below the surface, sperm whales descend into darkness in pursuit of large squid. These dives carry them through depths exceeding several kilometers, into environments where vision becomes secondary and sound dominates perception. Communication occurs through powerful sequences of clicks known as codas. Researchers studying whale populations have discovered that different groups possess distinct repertoires of these acoustic patterns. The variations are learned rather than inherited. Young whales acquire them from other members of their social group. In effect, populations maintain cultural traditions transmitted across generations. What information these codas convey remains uncertain. The sounds travel enormous distances through seawater, linking individuals separated by expanses that would isolate most terrestrial animals. Names, identities, locations, social relationships, or concepts entirely unfamiliar to human cognition may exist within these exchanges. The structure suggests complexity, yet much of the meaning remains hidden beneath the surface. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of cephalopod intelligence lies in its evolutionary origin. The last common ancestor shared by humans and octopuses existed more than 600 million years ago and possessed a body far simpler than either descendant. From that distant starting point, two entirely separate evolutionary journeys unfolded. One eventually produced primates, language, and technology. The other produced animals whose intelligence is distributed through flexible limbs, whose bodies function as extensions of cognition itself. The convergence is profound. Sophisticated problem-solving emerged not once, but multiple times through radically different biological designs. The ocean reminds us that intelligence is not a single invention. It is a possibility that life can discover by more than one path. Normality is a perspective shaped by circumstance. A creature born beneath sunlight assumes sunlight is fundamental. A species that breathes air imagines air as the natural medium of life. Human history unfolded on coastlines, plains, forests, and river valleys, all situated within a remarkably thin layer at the uppermost edge of the biosphere. From that vantage point, the deep ocean appears remote and exceptional. Yet after tracing the pathways carved by pressure, darkness, chemistry, and time, the distinction begins to blur. The deeper reality of Earth suggests a possibility that feels almost inverted. The environment we call ordinary may be the exception rather than the rule. Far below the continents and waves lies a realm that occupies most of the planet's living space. The deep ocean covers approximately 2/3 of Earth's surface and contains the overwhelming majority of habitable volume available to multicellular life. It is cold, dark, highly pressurized, and remarkably stable. Entire geological eras have passed, while conditions in many deep environments changed only gradually. Long before forests spread across continents, before flowering plants appeared, before mammals diversified into their modern forms, deep marine ecosystems were already established. They endured through extinctions, continental rearrangements, climate shifts, and transformations that repeatedly altered the face of the surface world. The environments familiar to humans occupy a comparatively narrow band: forests, grasslands, coral reefs, deserts, and cities all exist within a shallow envelope balanced between atmosphere and ocean. Temperatures fluctuate daily and seasonally. Storms reshape landscapes. Chemical conditions vary. Sunlight governs nearly every process. To those who inhabit it, this world feels expansive. Measured against the scale of the entire biosphere, however, it resembles a thin, illuminated film stretched across a much larger and older foundation. Seen through the biology encountered along this journey, the idea becomes even more striking. A piezophile adapted to immense pressure does not merely tolerate such conditions, it requires them. Remove the pressure, and its cellular machinery fails. The environment humans consider normal would be fatal. A tube worm living beside hydrothermal vents relies on chemical partnerships that make no use of sunlight. The bright surface ocean, rich with light and turbulence, would be as unfamiliar to it as a distant planet. A Greenland shark, moving through cold northern depths, experiences time according to rhythms extending across centuries. Generations of human lives pass, while a single shark continues its slow passage through dark water. Even the chemistry of the surface begins to appear unusual when viewed from another biological perspective. Atmospheric oxygen supports complex life, yet oxygen is also intensely reactive. It damages cells, alters molecules, and forces organisms to maintain elaborate protective systems. Seasonal temperature swings, changing weather patterns, and rapid environmental fluctuations create challenges that many deep organisms never encounter. Conditions celebrated as life-giving by surface species may appear unstable and chemically aggressive to creatures evolved beneath thousands of meters of water. The perception of alienness therefore shifts direction. The anglerfish suspended in darkness, the siphonophore drifting through vast volumes of open water, the vent communities drawing energy from the planet's interior, and the ancient lineages, preserved by deep stability, are often described as departures from normal biology. Yet in terms of occupied space, evolutionary duration, and sheer abundance of living matter, these forms belong to Earth's dominant habitat. They are expressions of conditions that have shaped life across immense stretches of planetary history. Human beings constructed their understanding of normal from a single corner of the biosphere, the corner where our own lineage happened to emerge. That perspective is natural, but it is incomplete. Beneath the familiar world exists another, larger one, older in many respects and governed by different rules. The creatures inhabiting it are not distant from nature's center. They reveal that the boundaries of normal life have always been far broader than we imagined, extending deep into the planet that has quietly sustained them all along. At the deepest level of biology, beneath scales and skin, beneath eyes adapted to darkness and cells adapted to pressure, beneath every visible difference accumulated across immense stretches of evolutionary time, there exists a continuity so complete that it binds the entire living world into a single inheritance. The ocean reveals this truth with unusual clarity because it presents life in forms so unfamiliar that they appear disconnected from everything known at the surface. Yet the further one descends into the diversity of life, the more impossible it becomes to ignore the thread running through all of it. A bacterium thriving within mineral-rich vent fluid and a human contemplating the existence of that bacterium occupy opposite ends of an astonishing biological spectrum. One survives in conditions of heat, pressure, and chemistry that would destroy most surface organisms within moments. The other emerged beneath open skies, shaped by entirely different environmental pressures. Their bodies share no obvious resemblance. Their experiences of the world have almost nothing in common. Yet both are built from the same molecular instructions, written in the same genetic language, using the same 4 nucleotide bases, arranged into endlessly varied sequences. The significance of this becomes clearer when viewed against the immense variety encountered throughout the deep. The pressure-adapted proteins of piezo-files, refined to function where ordinary enzymes fail, are still proteins assembled from the same amino acids used throughout life. The tissues of an anglerfish, the muscles of a Greenland shark, the bacterial symbionts living within a tubeworm, and the neurons inside a human brain all depend upon molecular systems recognizable across the entire tree of life. The machinery differs in detail, but the architecture remains familiar. Life has modified, expanded, and elaborated the design, yet it has never abandoned the underlying language from which the design emerged. This continuity extends beyond DNA itself. The genetic code translating nucleotide sequences into proteins is nearly universal. Cellular membranes maintain boundaries through related chemical principles. Energy is stored and transferred through molecular pathways whose origins reach back toward the earliest chapters of biological history. Even organisms separated by hundreds of millions of years of independent evolution continue to carry traces of ancient solutions inherited from distant ancestors whose existence predates every modern ecosystem. The contrast between similarity and difference creates one of the most remarkable perspectives biology offers. A deep-sea organism may possess a body plan unlike anything encountered on land. It may perceive the world through electrical fields, chemical gradients, or pressure waves. It may live in darkness, derive energy from geological processes, or survive for spans of time extending far beyond a human lifetime. Yet beneath those differences lies chemistry so familiar that laboratories can compare genes, proteins, and metabolic pathways across species separated by extraordinary evolutionary distance. What appears at first to be separation gradually reveals itself as variation. The ocean did not invent a second biology. It explored the possibilities contained within the first one. Every adaptation described across this journey, every unusual body, every improbable survival strategy emerged from the same foundational system and the same ancestral inheritance. Evolution produced countless expressions, but it continued writing with the same alphabet. Perhaps that is the quiet lesson waiting beneath the darkness, the pressure, and the immense distances. Life is not defined by a particular shape, habitat, or way of living. It is defined by continuity. The creatures inhabiting the deepest regions of Earth may seem impossibly distant from the familiar world above, yet their cells carry the same ancient grammar. Across oceans, across ecosystems, across hundreds of millions of years, the language persists, changing its accent but never losing its meaning, connecting every living thing to every other through a shared story written in chemistry. There is a particular kind of silence that accompanies an unfinished map. It is not the silence of absence, but the silence of information waiting beyond the edge of what is known. After everything revealed throughout this journey, from pressure-adapted microbes to ancient sharks and drifting colonies longer than the largest whales, that silence remains. In many ways, it grows louder. Each discovery in the deep ocean has not narrowed the mystery. It has expanded it, revealing how little of the living planet has actually been seen. The catalog of deep ocean life often creates the impression of completeness. Names have been assigned, classifications have been built, museum collections hold specimens gathered across decades of exploration. Yet these achievements occupy only a tiny illuminated patch within a vastly larger darkness. Recent analyses of exploration records suggest that humans have visually observed only a minute fraction of the deep seafloor, an area so small compared to the whole that it approaches symbolism rather than coverage. Most of the planet's largest habitat remains beyond direct observation. The consequences of that fact are difficult to fully absorb. Every year, thousands of marine organisms enter scientific literature for the first time. Research vessels returning from abyssal plains, trenches, seamounts, and vent systems routinely recover species that no one previously knew existed. Genetic surveys deepen the mystery further. Sediment collected from the ocean floor contains enormous libraries of biological information, and a remarkable proportion of those sequences cannot be matched to any known organism. They belong to lineages that remain invisible to science, biological stories represented only by fragments of molecular text waiting for the rest of the narrative to be found. The pattern has repeated often enough that discovery is no longer surprising. It is expected. Entire ecosystems have emerged from darkness with little warning. Hydrothermal vents transformed biology. Cold seeps revealed parallel communities built on unfamiliar energy pathways, Remote trenches uncovered animals thriving under pressures once assumed incompatible with complex life. Each time a new environment is explored, life demonstrates that its possibilities extend beyond previous assumptions. Even some of the largest creatures on Earth remain strangely elusive. Enormous cephalopods entered human imagination centuries before they entered direct observation. For much of scientific history, they existed as fragments, scars, and indirect evidence. Their reality was assembled from clues left behind in other animals. Similar gaps still persist. The ocean contains organisms whose existence is certain, yet whose ordinary lives remain largely unseen. There are hunters known only through remains, migrations detected only through instruments, and communities inferred from chemistry long before they are documented by cameras. Far from the coasts and shipping lanes, beyond familiar regions of study, immense areas of seafloor continue their existence without witness. Some trenches descend into depths deeper than mountains are tall. Vast plains stretch across distances measured in thousands of kilometers. Geological formations rise and fall through darkness that has persisted uninterrupted for spans of time exceeding the age of many surface ecosystems. Within those environments, evolution continues its patient work, producing adaptations, relationships, and perhaps entire biological strategies that have never entered human awareness. What makes this uncertainty especially significant is that the unknown is not separate from the world above. The deep ocean participates continuously in the processes that sustain the surface. Carbon cycles through its depths, nutrients move through its food webs, chemical balances are maintained through interactions still being uncovered. Countless organisms contribute to systems upon which climates, ecosystems, and human civilization ultimately depend. The largest mystery remaining on Earth is not hidden on another world. It surrounds this one from below. Most of it remains unseen, unnamed, and undescribed, carrying on with its ancient work in darkness while science continues the slow task of learning what has been there all along. There is a moment that arrives after enough exposure to the deep ocean, a moment when the word monster begins to lose its meaning. The creatures encountered there still appear strange. Their bodies still resist easy comparison. Their lives still unfold according to rules unfamiliar to surface experience. Yet the longer they are observed, the more difficult it becomes to regard them as aberrations. What changes is not the creatures themselves. What changes is the framework through which they are viewed. Human intuition was assembled in a remarkably narrow environment. It emerged among animals shaped by gravity, sunlight, seasons, weather, and landscapes visible across open distances. From that perspective, certain assumptions became so common that they hardened into expectations. An animal should possess a recognizable face. Eyes should occupy predictable positions. Reproduction should follow familiar patterns. Bodies should be organized around structures repeated again and again across the surface world. These expectations feel universal only because they developed within a limited sample of life's possibilities. Far below that familiar realm, those assumptions begin to dissolve. There are bodies that challenge the very idea of individuality. There are hunters whose most important senses never produce an image. There are organisms composed of countless specialized units functioning together so completely that the boundary between colony and creature becomes difficult to define. There are partnerships so intimate that separate species become dependent upon one another for survival, each incomplete without the other. There are life histories that transform anatomy, physiology, and behavior into forms that seem impossible until examined within the environment that produced them. The instinct to describe such organisms as monstrous reveals something important about human perception. The label says less about the organism and more about the observer. It reflects the distance between expectation and reality. When a body plan differs too greatly from familiar experience, language reaches for categories associated with the unusual, the unsettling, or the unimaginable. Yet biology does not recognize those categories. Natural selection is indifferent to familiarity. It preserves whatever works. Viewed through that lens, every deep ocean adaptation becomes remarkably precise. The elongated jaws, the distributed colonies, the bacterial partnerships, the altered sensory systems, and the extraordinary reproductive strategies are not deviations from biological logic. They are expressions of it. Each emerged because it solved a problem presented by a specific environment. Pressure demanded one solution, darkness demanded another. Scarcity, isolation, chemistry, and immense spans of time imposed additional constraints. Life responded not with randomness, but with refinement. The pattern appears repeatedly throughout the deep. Whenever conditions become restrictive, evolution explores the available possibilities and gradually settles upon forms capable of succeeding within those limits. The result can appear startling when viewed from the outside. Yet beneath the unfamiliar appearance lies the same process responsible for every forest, reef, grassland, and animal known at the surface. The difference is that the deep ocean applies pressures unlike those encountered elsewhere, and so the solutions it produces occupy regions of biological possibility rarely imagined by surface minds. What emerges from this recognition is a broader understanding of life itself. The range of forms available to living systems is vastly larger than everyday experience suggests. Many of the structures once dismissed as impossible exist not only in theory but in reality, operating successfully in habitats hidden beneath kilometers of water. The deep ocean demonstrates again and again that biology is not confined to the patterns humans find familiar. Given sufficient time and sufficiently demanding conditions, life explores directions that seem implausible until they are discovered. These creatures carry the weight of that lesson. They remind us that nature is not obligated to resemble expectation. The forms drifting through darkness, buried in sediment, clinging to vent chimneys, or moving through water older than recorded history are not mistakes, anomalies, or exceptions. They are answers, shaped with extraordinary precision by environments that asked very different questions from those asked at the surface, and life responded in the only way it ever has, by becoming whatever it needed to become. Long before forests spread across continents, before flowers opened to sunlight, before reptiles, mammals, or birds appeared in any form recognizable today, a vast realm already existed beneath the oceans. Its defining qualities had largely settled into place. Darkness prevailed. Pressure accumulated through immense columns of water. Temperatures remained low and remarkably stable, while the surface world continued changing its face through one geological chapter after another. The deep ocean persisted, carrying forward an environmental continuity almost unmatched anywhere else on Earth. Across the history of the planet, surface ecosystems have repeatedly experienced interruption. Continents collided and separated. Ice advanced and retreated across enormous distances. Volcanic provinces transformed climates. Asteroid impacts altered the trajectory of life itself. Entire biological communities vanished, leaving only fragments from which new worlds emerged. The surface biosphere possesses a history written in cycles of destruction and renewal, a long sequence of endings followed by reconstruction. Far below those events, the abyss often experienced a different reality. The consequences of global change certainly reached the depths, yet they arrived muted, filtered through layers of water and time. Conditions shifted, but more gradually. The darkness remained, the pressure remained, the broad physical framework endured. Where surface organisms frequently faced environmental revolutions, many deep lineages occupied habitats defined by persistence. This continuity granted evolution something unusually valuable: time. Not merely millions of years, but hundreds of millions of years during which successful solutions could be refined, adjusted, and preserved. Adaptations that proved effective were not constantly subjected to the same scale of ecological upheaval that repeatedly swept across shallower environments. Evolution continued its work everywhere. Yet, in the deep, it often worked upon foundations that remained stable long enough for extraordinary specialization to emerge. The result can be seen in lineages whose histories stretch backward through intervals so vast they begin to resemble geography rather than time. A Greenland shark, moving slowly through northern depths, today inhabits waters shaped by processes older than entire branches of human history. Its lifespan alone extends across centuries, yet even that remarkable duration appears brief beside the age of the environment supporting it. The ocean surrounding it was ancient before the shark existed. It will remain ancient long after the shark is gone. Something similar echoes through the story of the coelacanth. Its ancestors inhabited seas, while the continents carried radically different arrangements, and while life on land occupied forms now known only through stone. The modern animal is not frozen in time, nor untouched by evolution. It has continued adapting throughout its history. Yet the broad architecture of its body persists as evidence of how durable certain solutions can become when environmental conditions allow continuity across immense stretches of geological time. This long stability helps explain why deep ocean organisms sometimes appear to operate according to unfamiliar principles. Their adaptations were not assembled in haste. They emerged through prolonged interaction with a world that changed slowly enough for evolution to explore pathways unavailable elsewhere. Structures could be refined across epochs. Relationships between species could deepen across ages. Physiological strategies could persist long enough to reveal their full potential. The deep ocean, therefore, stands as more than a habitat. It resembles an ancient experiment still underway, one whose beginning reaches far beyond the rise of modern ecosystems. Generation after generation has entered that darkness, encountered the same fundamental pressures, and contributed another small adjustment to biological designs already shaped by unimaginable spans of time. The creatures inhabiting those depths today are the latest expressions of that enduring process, carrying within their bodies solutions tested not across centuries or millennia, but across chapters of Earth history, so long that the surface world itself has been reinvented many times while the experiment continued below. A map drawn from a fragment can still appear complete to the hand that holds it. For most of human history, that fragment was the surface world, the narrow band of conditions in which our species evolved, observed, and learned to build explanations about life. From that small vantage point, certain assumptions felt secure. Light seemed essential. Familiar body plans seemed representative. The limits of biology appeared visible. Beyond those limits lay myth, speculation, and impossibility. Again and again, the deep ocean demonstrated how fragile those assumptions were. Long before bioluminescence entered scientific literature, sailors crossing dark waters reported seas that shimmered with living light. Waves glowed around ships. Trails of radiance followed unseen movements beneath the surface. Such accounts often drifted into folklore because there was no accepted framework capable of accommodating them. The ocean was not presenting a miracle. Countless organisms were simply carrying out ordinary biological processes in a realm few people had ever witnessed directly. What appeared supernatural from above was routine below. The same pattern emerged wherever the boundaries of knowledge met the boundaries of depth. Fragments of enormous tentacles occasionally arrived on distant shores. Circular scars found on whales hinted at hidden struggles taking place far beneath the reach of sunlight. Stories accumulated, growing larger with each retelling. Sea monsters entered maritime tradition not because imagination was excessive, but because evidence arrived without context. The giant squid eventually proved real, not as a creature of legend, but as an animal occupying an environment so inaccessible that direct observation lagged centuries behind indirect evidence. Even scientific certainty has repeatedly encountered the same correction. For generations, biology regarded sunlight as the ultimate foundation beneath every complex ecosystem. The idea appeared so fundamental that alternatives were rarely considered. Then researchers descended to volcanic structures on the ocean floor and found communities flourishing entirely through chemical energy. The discovery did not reveal a rare exception. It revealed that an entire category of possibility had been excluded from consideration simply because no one had seen it before. A recurring lesson emerges from these moments. The ocean has rarely violated natural law. More often, it has exposed limitations in the observer. The extraordinary quality belonged not to the organisms themselves, but to the distance separating human expectation from biological reality. Each encounter revealed another place where familiarity had been mistaken for universality. This recognition carries a wider implication. Every catalog of what life can or cannot do is constructed from available evidence. Yet the evidence gathered so far represents only a minute fraction of the deep world. Vast regions remain unseen. Entire habitats have never received sustained observation. Countless organisms continue their lives beyond the reach of cameras, nets, and submersibles. The framework used to judge possibility, therefore, rests upon a sample astonishingly small compared with the scale of the environment being described. In that sense, the deep ocean functions as a mirror. It reflects not only strange creatures and unfamiliar ecosystems, but also the boundaries of human perspective. Every descent into previously unexplored depths measures the distance between what is known and what merely feels known. Each newly documented organism becomes evidence that reality is under no obligation to resemble expectation. The pattern has remained remarkably consistent. Exploration advances, a prediction fails, an assumption narrows, a larger view replaces it. Then the process begins again. The deep ocean continues exactly as it always has, while human understanding slowly expands to meet it. Far below the surface, life proceeds according to rules written by pressure, darkness, chemistry, and time. The surprise belongs to us, the correction belongs to us, and with so much of that world still unobserved, the mirror remains unfinished, reflecting back not only what exists in the depths, but how much of existence still waits beyond the edge of imagination. Somewhere beyond the reach of every camera ever lowered into the sea, life is changing at this very moment. Not dramatically, not all at once, but through the same slow process that has shaped every organism encountered throughout this journey. A mutation appears. A trait proves useful. A lineage persists. Another fades. In darkness, beyond observation, evolution continues its patient work, indifferent to whether anyone is present to witness the result. The deep ocean is often spoken of as though it were an archive, a place where ancient forms endure and old solutions survive. Yet preservation is only part of the story. The abyss is not frozen, it is active. Across trenches, seamounts, methane seeps, brine pools, and immense sediment plains stretching beyond the horizon, natural selection remains as busy today as it was millions of years ago. Every pressure shaping life in those depths still exists. Cold still limits metabolism. Isolation still separates populations. Scarcity still rewards efficiency. Darkness still governs perception. The conditions remain, and so the experiment continues. Within habitats never visited by a submersible, organisms are adapting to challenges unknown to science. Entire populations may be diverging into new species. Novel partnerships may be forming between microbes and animals. Physiologies, unlike any yet documented, may already exist, refined across generations in places absent from every biological catalog. The ocean does not pause while knowledge catches up. Discovery is always trailing behind reality. This understanding lends unusual weight to the present moment. Human technology has only recently gained the ability to reach parts of the deep with consistency. Even now, exploration remains scattered across a realm covering most of the planet. Each expedition returns carrying observations that expand the boundaries of biology. New species emerge from samples. New behaviors appear in footage. New relationships between organisms challenge assumptions that seemed secure only a few years earlier. At the same time, industrial interest has begun moving toward regions that remain largely undescribed. Vast fields of polymetallic nodules scattered across abyssal seafloors contain minerals increasingly sought for modern technologies. Yet many of the communities surrounding those nodules have received little direct study. In some cases, organisms are collected and recognized as new to science only after human activity has already reached their habitat. The sequence feels strangely reversed, as though chapters of a book are being altered before they have been read. The concern extends beyond individual species. Deep environments often nurture lineages separated from one another for immense stretches of evolutionary time. Some may possess biochemical pathways found nowhere else. Others may represent unique branches of life's history, preserving information about adaptation, survival, and evolution unavailable from any surface ecosystem. Their significance cannot always be measured immediately, because significance often becomes visible only after discovery. Yet the broader pattern remains remarkably hopeful. Every major exploration effort continues to reveal more than expected. The inventory of deep life grows each year. Fresh ecosystems emerge from regions once assumed barren. Organisms appear whose adaptations require entirely new explanations. Again and again, the ocean demonstrates that prediction is not its strongest feature. Surprise is. Perhaps that is the most consistent lesson of all. The pressures shaping the deep have remained largely unchanged across immense spans of time. Darkness, pressure, hunger, isolation, chemistry, and cold continue asking the same questions they have always asked. Life continues answering them. Each answer is shaped by circumstance, refined through selection, and tested across generations. The laboratory remains open. Its corridors extend across most of the planet. Its experiments unfold without interruption. Somewhere below, Hidden beyond the boundaries of current maps and current understanding, organisms are becoming something slightly different from what they were before. The next solution is already taking shape. Whatever form it eventually assumes, history suggests it will emerge from conditions we recognize, yet arrive at a result no one anticipated. Far below weather, below waves, below the reach of sunlight and the memory of day, there exists a stillness unlike any found on land. It is not a silence in the ordinary sense. Water carries sound efficiently, and life continues its quiet exchanges through movement, vibration, and chemistry. Yet, the immense pressure, the unbroken cold, and the vast absence of light create a feeling of permanence that settles over everything. At depths of several kilometers, the ocean seems less like a place and more like a condition, one that has endured through spans of time so immense that entire surface worlds have come and gone above it. Within that enduring darkness, evolution never stopped. Long before forests spread across continents, before wings crossed the sky, before mammals emerged from small nocturnal ancestors, organisms were already adapting to the deep. Generation followed generation in an environment that remained remarkably stable while the surface passed through upheavals, extinctions, and reinventions. The work continued slowly, patiently, without audience or interruption. Every lineage explored possibilities presented by pressure, scarcity, chemistry, and distance. Every successful solution joined the vast archive of living forms carried forward through time. Seen from the surface, many of those solutions appear strange. Bodies glow with self-made light. Colonies function as single organisms, while consisting of countless individuals. Sensory systems detect forces invisible to human perception. Cells operate under pressures that would destroy familiar life. Yet strangeness depends upon perspective. The deep ocean did not set out to create anomalies. It simply responded to conditions different from those that shaped the narrow world in which human intuition evolved. That realization changes the direction of the story. It becomes increasingly difficult to view the deep as a remote extension of the surface. In many ways, the relationship runs the other direction. The oldest chapters of life's history point downward. The earliest organisms emerged in a planet dominated by oceans. Ancient chemical processes unfolded beneath water long before landscapes familiar to modern eyes existed. Whether life began directly within deep environments or in places that closely resembled them, the roots of biology reach toward conditions far older than forests, grasslands, rivers, or cities. The creatures inhabiting those depths today therefore represent more than unusual adaptations. They are participants in an experiment whose origins stretch back toward the beginning of biological history itself. The luminous lure of an anglerfish, the coordinated body of a giant siphonophore, the pressure-dependent chemistry of deep microorganisms, the extraordinary architecture of predators and scavengers moving through darkness, all belong to branches of a process that has been running for hundreds of millions of years. These forms are not deviations from some ideal template. They are legitimate expressions of what life can become when guided by different constraints across immense spans of time. From a human perspective, it is tempting to place the surface at the center of the story. Civilization emerged here. Human experience unfolds here. Every language, culture, and scientific tradition originated beneath open skies rather than beneath kilometers of water. Yet the planet itself offers a different perspective. Most of its living space lies beyond direct human reach. Most of its history unfolded before human observers existed. The deep ocean remained present throughout it all, carrying forward lineages, processes, and possibilities that continue today. And so, the journey arrives at a quieter conclusion than it first appeared to promise. The deep ocean is not remarkable because it contains monsters. It is remarkable because it reveals how narrow familiar experience truly is. Beneath the surface exists a world older than memory, larger than imagination, and still actively shaping the planet above. The surface looks downward and sees something alien. The depths require no such comparison. They have endured through ages beyond counting, continuing their ancient conversation with life while the brief histories of the world above pass overhead like weather.